My name is Clint, and this is Yin Yoga. Today, during class, you'll need a couple of blocks, probably a towel, maybe a bolster, and definitely a strap with a buckle of sorts. If you don't have the strap, that's okay. We're going to be using that for a bound butterfly pose, and you can get into a butterfly without using the strap. You just won't be able to get quite as much tension on your groins. So today I'd like to start in the pose of a child. So to get in the pose of a child, come to a kneeling position with your knees wide. Now, your knees can be right on the edge of your mat. Your big toes are together. If you'd like to turn this into a frog pose where your legs are spread even farther apart, you can just maybe put a towel off to the side of your mat so that you can open up your groins a little bit more. And then begin to walk your hands forward, coming down with your head towards the mat. If your head doesn't come all the way down, that's okay. You can always use a block underneath your forehead. If your chest comes down to the mat, that's good too. Take a deep cleansing breath in through your nose and exhale it out through your nose. Take another deep breath in through your nose. Let it all out through your nose. And let your breath come to its own natural rhythm, in and out through your nose. Now within each exhale, see if you can soften your inner thighs. This pose is directed at your groins, your inner thighs. And this is a great time just to let go. It's also a pose that works on your ankles. It's a nice ankle stretch. And you don't get too many of those in any kind of yoga. But with your toes pointed down on the mat, it's a nice stretch. And it's a nice back, nice spine lengthener. Throughout today's practice, you're going to be using only your natural breathing, your natural breath in and out through your nose. And use your breath as your guide. Use your breath to lead you into poses and to help you come back out of them. As you inhale, maybe you can lengthen, and as you exhale, just soften. The practice of Yin is one of practicing stillness. Because when you stretch into a pose and you find the appropriate edge, where you can get a good stretch on the targeted muscles, but still be able to soften those muscles. Stillness will allow those muscles to soften. And once they do, the tension in the pose itself from your body position will transfer into your fascia from the muscles. Your fascia is the tissue that surrounds all your muscles. It gives lubrication so that your muscles don't get hung up on bones, or on adjacent muscles. Your fascia is made of collagen, the same element as makes up your bones. So it's really tough, durable material. That takes a lot to be able to stretch. And that's why you'll be in these poses for 3 to 5 minutes. And after each pose, there's a counter pose or a counter movement to bring normalcy back into your joints that you were targeting. Begin to deepen your breath. On your next inhale, slowly walk your hands back towards your knees. Bring your knees toward each other and rise up into table, where your hands are directly underneath your shoulders. Your knees are directly underneath your hips. And do a couple of cat-cows here. Your toenails should be on the mat. You can use a towel to soften the mat, or just fold the mat up at your knees if your knees are bothering you. And the next time you come to center pause, look down between your knees to see if you can see your feet. If you can see your feet, move them out until they're invisible. And then curl your toes under, and you're not going to be going up into downward facing dog, but rather begin to walk your hands back, coming into a toe stretch. And by moving your feet outward a bit, you'll be able to stretch even your pinky toes and just reach back and see if your pinky toes are curled under. And if they're not, adjust your feet so that you can get them turned and stressed. What you're doing here for the bottom of your foot, your plantar fascia, that fascia is one of the larger ones in your body, more dense, because that's all the tensile strength in your foot, holding your heel to the balls of your feet. It attaches to the inside front of your heel and then to the base of all your toes. And you normally don't even think about that plantar fascia until you have plantar fasciitis. Begin to deepen your breath. Uncurl your toes. Come forward, uncurl your toes. Bring your toenails down on the mat and maybe tap them a little bit. And then sit back on your heels, if that works for you. What you're doing here is you're stretching the tops of your feet again, your ankles. You've been giving your ankle a nice flex when you were bending your toes, and now you're extending your ankles. If you have really high arches, maybe you have to lean all the way back so that you can stretch the tops of your feet. A month or so ago, we did a little bit of foot yoga with a tennis ball or lacrosse ball or a fascia ball. I think we're going to be doing that again in the next week or two, so stay tuned to that. Okay, from here, the next pose is going to be, come back up onto your hands and knees, and then bring your right hip down, swing your feet around to the front of the mat. And we're going to be going into reclining swan. So find yourself a block, and then come down onto your elbows, then all the way down onto your back. Bend your knees, walk your feet up towards your sit bones. Have your block handy, but you don't need it yet. With your hands next to your hips, tuck your tailbone under. And then on an inhale, lift your hips up towards the ceiling. And hold it up here for just a moment. Maybe as you're breathing in and out, you can feel the stretch across the front of your pelvis. And then on an exhale, lower your hips back down. Grab your block. And then on your next inhale, lift up and then insert the block the lowest way underneath your sacrum. Your sacrum is that flat bone that goes between the two wings of your pelvis. Your sacrum is actually 5 vertebrae that have fused together, completing that task about the time you were 29 years old. From here, we're going to do the right side. So lift your right foot up and step on the ceiling. Push your heel away. Really stretch out that hamstring. In this arrangement of your body, you can probably get your legs straight, even if you do have tight hamstrings. And then from here, bend that right knee, bring the right ankle over the top of the left thigh. Let your right knee just kind of fall towards the front of the room. And then on an inhale, lift your left knee up and draw that knee down into your chest. Bring your right hand between your thighs and maybe make a bind around the back of your left thigh. Or maybe if you have long arms or you're flexible, maybe you can make a bind in front of your left shin. It really doesn't matter. But the target here in swan is your glutes on your right side and your right hip socket. So with that in mind, you have all kinds of options. From here, you can maybe push your right knee a little bit farther away with your right hand. Make sure that that right knee has no sensation. But if you can push that away, you're actually twisting your femur in the hip socket. Maybe that works, maybe it doesn't. Another possibility, if you'd like to intensify this, you could always move that left heel up your thigh towards your hip crease. And then continue to draw that left knee in towards your chest. Be kind to that knee. Sensation is good, but pain certainly is not. And if you're not feeling this very much, maybe you just want to draw your right hip a little bit off to the right and see if you can feel this in a different part of your glutes here. Any part of your glute is where you want to feel this pose. So experiment. Begin to deepen your breath. On your next exhale, release your bind and slowly lower that left foot down towards the mat. Lift that right foot up and step on the ceiling again, opening up that knee joint. Should feel pretty good. And then bring it down to meet the left knee, left foot. Remove your block. Draw your knees into your chest. Give yourself a squeeze and rock from left to right. And then the next time you come to center pause, from here, the next pose is going to be a spinal twist. So bring your knee or your knees out into T, your arms out into T, and lower your knees off to the left. Now remember, you can use a block between your knees if they're not close, or if your right knee is hung up in the air. You can always reach and just rest your hand on that right knee also. This pose targets your spine. It's a spinal twist, meaning that your shoulders and your pelvis are in two different planes. It doesn't matter if your right shoulder is down on the mat. Just soften into this pose. Maybe you can push your right hip towards the front of the mat. Maybe even move your knees a little bit towards the front of the mat. And then see what happens to the stretch in your back. Maybe you can feel your side body opening up a little bit more, or maybe it's less effective for you. Seek what feels best today, because on another day, it will be different. Soften your belly. Soften your glutes. If you'd like your IT band on your right leg to be stretched, maybe just straighten that right leg off to the side wall. It's up to you. You have all of the options you wish. The only place that you really need to feel this is in your spine and maybe in your obliques, those muscles on your side body. Soften your shoulders, your jaw. maybe breathe into your kidneys. Get a little bit of a back bend. Observe your body. Begin to deepen your breath. On your next inhale, bring your knees back together. And then roll onto your back with your knees going into your chest. Give yourself a squeeze. Push your hips towards the front of the room, your shoulders towards the back, and rock from left to right. All the way, hip and shoulder on each side. And then coming all the way over onto your right side. Use your left hand to push the floor away, coming up into a seated position. And then through that, bring your feet around behind you. Come all the way up into table. Do a couple of cat-cows here. This next pose is my favorite, so you already know what it is. Lift up your left foot, stretch it back onto the back wall. Try to push the wall away so there's a way to get away from this pose. And then when you're ready, bring that left foot up alongside your left pinky finger. Coming into dragon. And dragon here has a bunch of alternatives too. The targets of dragon are your flexors, your hip flexors. In the top of your right thigh, both your psoas and your iliacus, same as in your left side. Your left side is really flexed. Your right side is really extended. That's what makes this pose so challenging and so much fun. So your hands can be flat on the mat. This makes it into a high-flying dragon. And stretch your spine long. Remember, you can always put a towel underneath your shin to raise your knee up, if you wish, or block. If you'd like to overstep your left knee and bring your left knee a little bit either toward or forward of your left toes, you can do that. What that does, it changes and actually adds a little bit more sensation into your left ankle, where you have the soleus, which is the muscle that is tied into your Achilles, and then also your gastrocnemius, which is the big muscle of your calf. But from here, try to drop your hips towards the mat and breathe through your nose. And if you have to make a modification because the pose becomes too easy, intensify it then. If it becomes too challenging, you can always back out. Backing out of a pose is the sign of a wise yogi. If you're comfortable here, you may stay. If you'd like to change this pose, and changing it doesn't make it better or worse. It just changes it. You can lower your elbows down towards the mat into low flying dragon. You can bring blocks underneath your elbows. Maybe your knee is comfortable where it is, or maybe you want to walk that left knee out to the left. If you do walk it out to the left, you get a little bit of an opener on your left hip. And remember, you can always back out of it. This is the aspect of dragon that I always find so challenging. Try to keep your spine straight. Maybe drop your hips a little bit more. Soften your pelvis in front of that right thigh. Begin to deepen your breath. On your next inhale, bring your hands to the mat. Straighten your arms. Walk your hands back until you can bring your left foot back to meet the right. From here, you can do some cat-cows or big circles with your hips, or you can lift your hips up into downward facing dog. Just depends on you today. And then carefully lower your knees back down to the mat. From here, walk your hands forward, coming down onto your elbows, and then walk your knees back, coming into Sphinx pose. So with Sphinx, your elbows are directly underneath your shoulders. Your palms are flat on the mat in front of you. You lift your chest high. Your legs are close together. They're not glued together, but your toenails are pressing down. From here, press your toenails down so much that your knees and your thighs lift up. So now the only points of contact you have are your hands and your feet, your elbows and your pubic bone. Gaze at the mat somewhere between your hands. They'll protect your cervical spine. And then just melt away. Let your body soften and feel those muscles that were just tense a moment ago become soft. This seems like it's at a glacial pace. But your body has yielded to gravity here. And you can now probably feel that stretch in your spine. Notice where that is. And then on an exhale, lower down. Bring your head to your forearms. Maybe bring your right knee out to the side and up towards your right elbow. That gives a little bit of a bend to your spine, which is a counterpose to Sphinx. And then on your next inhale, bring that right knee back to meet the left. Come back up onto your elbows. This time I'm going to give you an option, two options. One, you can widen up your stance so your feet can come all the way out to the outside of the mat, if that feels good to you. And then if you were okay with Sphinx and want to try Seal, go ahead. Bring your hands about one hand width or hand length in front and lift your chest high. And like before, push your toenails into the mat, lifting your knees and your thighs. Now you're in Seal. This is more intense than Sphinx. Doesn't make it better. And then begin to soften your knees. Soften your thighs, your glutes, and feel your shoulders. What's happening there? Feel your back, your abs. Try not to let your shoulder blades rise up, but let them just roll down your back. And now notice where you feel this in your spine. Is it in the same place? Is it higher up? Or is it down lower towards your sacrum? And then on your next exhale, release. Bring your head back down to your forearms. Turn your head the opposite direction. Bring your left knee up towards your left elbow. And then on your next inhale, straighten out your left leg. Bring your hands next to your chest. Push the floor away, rising up into table. Do a couple of cat-cows here. And the next time you come to center, pause. It's been so long since we've done this pose, I just had to do it. Lift your right foot up and back, step on that back wall. Really stretch out that hamstring by pushing your heel back. Try to keep your hips level. And then bring your right foot up next to your right pinky. Coming into dragon on the right side. You just can't have one side without the other. You can scooch that left knee back a little bit or a lot if you wish. With your hands on the mat, you're in high flying dragon. Although if you want to modify that, you may. I'm going to overstep my right knee. So my heel or my knee is roughly over the top of my big toe. And I can really feel this in my ankles, my right ankle. I walk a lot, and so this is a really, really nice way to stretch the lower leg muscles. Try softening your lower belly. If you're struggling in this pose, lengthen out your breath. Breathe deeply into your nose. And then exhale slowly through your nose. Try to get the exhales a little bit longer than the inhale. And if you'd like to modify this pose, like you did the other side, or different from the other side, you're welcome to it. I'm going to come down into low flying dragon, onto my elbows on blocks. I need to walk that right knee out a little bit to give more clearance for my hips. And notice the stretch in your left hip. Right all the way through the top of your thigh. Your psoas muscle attaches to the top of the femur and then goes all the way up to the top vertebrae in your lumbar spine, all the way up to the bottom rib vertebra. I sure wish I could stay here all day, but we have other poses. Begin to deepen your breath. On your next inhale, straighten up your arms, raise up your chest. Begin to walk your hands back. Bring your right leg back to meet the left. Into table, where you can make circles again, or down dog. Stretch out your legs. If you're in dog, walk out your dog. And the next pose will be reclining swan. So carefully lower your knees back down to your mat. Come on to one hip or the other. Swing your legs around to the front. And then come all the way down on your back. Make sure you have a block handy. Walk your feet up towards your sit bones. Hands next to your hips. From here, tuck your tailbone under and lift your hips up towards the ceiling. And see if you can feel a difference in the tops of your thighs from where your psoas was stretched, and then slowly lower back down. This time, grab a block, tuck your tailbone under again, lift up, insert the block the low way, the flat way, underneath your sacrum, lower back down, and then lift your left foot up onto the ceiling. Push that ceiling away. And then bend the left knee over the top of the right thigh like a gentleman sitting. Let your left knee just fall off towards the left. And when you're ready, lift that right knee up and bring that knee into your chest. The block just acts as a kickstand underneath your sacrum so that you don't have to strain as much with your arms holding your legs. Gravity does more work. It allows you a little bit more time to think about how you want to modify this. Notice what part of your glutes you feel right now. Draw your knees in a little bit more. See if there's any change. Maybe move your left knee towards the right a little bit. Doesn't have to be much. And then squeeze again. And that sensation probably moved more towards your sacrum. Getting a different part of your glute. Now you can continue to make modifications here to find some place that just is perfect for you today. Maybe they all feel good. Then just pick one. And know that whenever you're in swan, either on your belly or on top of the knee, or reclining swan like this, you can modify it to hit the exact right part of your glutes. You may have a part that is giving you trouble. If that's the case, find that area and give it a little more love, not by running away from it, by running toward it. Seeking that stimulation, and then showing love by holding it so that the knot or the uncomfortable aspect of the pose can be dealt with. Begin to deepen your breath. On your next exhale, release your body, lowering your feet down towards the mat. Take your left foot up onto the ceiling, push that ceiling away. And maybe you want to just lift up with just your right foot and take the block out, or you can lower your left foot down and use both feet. But regardless, come down, bring both knees into your chest, give yourself a squeeze, and rock from left to right. And the next time you come to center pause, from here, we're back to another spinal twist. So bring your arms out into T. If you have any blocks in the way, remove them. And then from here, lower your knees off to the right. Maybe your gaze can come off towards your left hand. Maybe not. If your head needs more space, just move it an inch to the left. Soften your shoulders here. Soften your glutes. If that left knee is up high, maybe just take that left hand and just lightly roll that hand over your left glute and your thigh, giving permission to soften. You can also modify this. If it feels good, you can bring your knees down towards the front of the mat and feel the twist in your spine rotating and moving downward into your lumbar spine. If that doesn't work for you, you can always bring your knees back up. But whatever movement you do, make a note of what's happening and when, so that the next time you're in this pose, you can take full advantage of it. Use your breath to find calmness. In this pose, your lungs are slightly compressed on your right side. Try breathing into those compressed areas. See what happens. There's no rush here. Breathe into each quadrant of your lungs. Begin to deepen your breath. On your next inhale, bring your knees back to center. Draw your knees into your chest. Give yourself a squeeze. Rock from left to right. Maybe make circles with your knees on the ceiling. Don't forget to go the other way. And then come all the way over onto your right side. Push the floor away. Come back up to a seated position. From here will be the bound butterfly. So if you don't have a bolster, that's fine. Set up 2 blocks like you do for 2 block Shavasana, where one block is right underneath your shoulder blades and the other block, the medium dimension, underneath your head. So get that set up. And then get your strap. Get your strap into a big circle. Bring the buckle in front of you. And don't worry if you don't have a buckled strap. You don't really need it. It just makes it a little bit more convenient. From here, bring the soles of your feet together and then just wrap the strap around the tops of your feet. So it looks like this. And then you can begin to pull. You may have to readjust the strap every now and again, but get the right amount of tension on your groins. And then get aligned with your blocks or your bolster and carefully come down. Make any adjustment of the blocks that might be right for you. If you want to increase the tension, now would be a good time to do it. You can pull that a little bit tighter. Now, if you don't have the blocks to sit up on, I highly recommend using a towel underneath the straps so that they don't cut into your upper inner thighs. That'd be pretty uncomfortable. And then just allow your arms to come out to the side. Like you were outside on the beach, just asking for the sun and the wind to bring you health. With the strap, giving the tension, you don't have to do too much here other than breathe into wherever you have the sensations. And it may come that you need to intensify this. Then pull the strap a little bit more. Or if you have to loosen it, loosen it. This pose is like every other pose, in that you want it to meet what your body needs at this moment. Soften your belly. Soften your glutes. Soften your quads. Again, maybe you just run your hands over your thighs, both the outer and inner. Give them the opportunity to yield to gravity. Soften your jaw and your eyes, your temples. You have a few options here. If you'd like to stay in this for a few more moments, you certainly can. If you can't wait to get out of the pose, now would be the time. But just loosen up on that buckle by pushing the buckle away. If you have a plastic buckle, it's real easy. Just release the snap. Get it loose enough so that you can slip it either down your hips or free up your feet. You can leave the strap wrapped around your waist. You don't have to bother yourself. You may want to stretch your legs out long. You can stay on the two blocks if you wish. Push your heels away. That will feel real good on the backs of your knees. Then bend your knees. Bring your soles of your feet onto the mat. Bring your hands somewhere close to your hips. And then windshield wiper your knees from left to right. And when you're ready, just come to a halt. Allow your legs to go out wide. Allow your palms to come up towards the ceiling. Take a deep cleansing breath into your nose and release it out through your nose. Take one more deep cleansing breath and release it. And take rest. If you're still in the bound butterfly and you wish to come out of it, go right ahead. Do that when it feels right for you. Exercise your yoga. Begin to deepen your breath. Bring your awareness back into this space. Bring movement to your fingers and to your toes, to your wrists and to your ankles. Carefully roll your head from left to right, if you can. And then lift your head, carefully removing the block, if the one is there. Set it aside, and then carefully come off the other block. coming down onto the mat. Bringing your knees into your chest. Give yourself a squeeze. Push your hips away. And rock from left to right. And then come all the way over onto your right side. Pausing for just a moment. And then using that left hand to push yourself up to a seated position. Thank you for sharing your yoga practice with me this afternoon. It was a pleasure to teach in that long bound butterfly that was suggested by one of you yogis. Almost had me forgetting about the terror of dragon. Take the compassion and the empathy and the peace that you practice on your mat, wherever you go, and share it with your family, your friends, and all that you meet. Namaste.
Namaste.
My name is Clint, and this has been Yin Yoga, and you may unmute yourselves if you wish.